RT is sitting down with Jesse Ventura, former governor of Minnesota, former Navy SEAL, former professional wrestler, actor, and best-selling author. It's very nice to see you back at our New York studios again.
Great to be here.
Now, Jesse, you've recently announced that you are considering participating in the presidential race in the year 2016 as an independent candidate because, of course, you believe that the two-party system is crippled and corrupt. So what better timing than now? Why not do it this time around?
Well, because it would take too long. You have to build for this. See, the difficult thing, if I do it, I will be with no party. It'll be just Jesse Ventura running for president, if I do it. Well, that requires me to go out and get ballot access in all 50 states. You can't do that overnight, and it costs a lot of money. That's why I've made the statement it will require a grassroots movement of people in every state to go out and do what it takes to get me ballot access so that I can be on the ballot. And then there's a second requirement I have to be guaranteed. I've got to be in the debates, because if you're not in the debates, you can't win. And I do not run for political office just to make a statement. When I run to win.
Now, your new book, of course, Democrats and Republicans, focuses on the parties being gang-like, right? And fighting for power just for the sake of having power. And you talk a lot about the need to eradicate corporations from politics. And my question to you, I guess, is how can this realistically be done in a country where this has been the system forever? And you yourself compare politicians to, possibly wearing NASCAR racing suits because they have so much support from corporations.
Well,
how can this be done?
First, NASCAR racing suits, like if you look at Jimmy Johnson, the great race, he's got patches all over that tells who his sponsors are. Well, if we require them to wear that, then we as voters will know who owns them, because they'll have to wear patches stating who owns them. That's kind of a joke, because it'll never happen. But there's so much corruption, and it won't take long. It just recently happened. It was against the law for a corporation to contribute to a political party until the Supreme Court of our land made that what I call disastrous ruling, where they said a corporation has the same rights as an individual and that money is free speech. Well, I'm waiting for the next guy to rob the bank and use that as his defense. I was only exercising my First Amendment rights of free speech. After all, money is free speech. So that just recently happened. What we need to do is reverse that. We have to overturn the Supreme Court's ruling on those two issues, and there is a movement to do that. The only way it can be done is to amend the Constitution to specifically state corporations do not have the same rights as individuals, and money is not free speech. If we can get that into the Constitution, then that's the only way you can overrule a Supreme Court decision.
Now, to me, one of the curious details about corporations in power is that we're seeing the same companies investing in both parties. And some people say it's a win-win situation for them, but in reality, others say, well, listen, actually, this is a lot more like betting on both red and black in roulette, because, either way you lose. So what's the point? Why do they do that?
Well, you don't lose, because one of them is going to be the president. And now
you lose
own
the
them.
Money that you invested in the other
Oh,
one.
That's nothing. Did you know what we pointed out in the book? In the book, these major corporations spend more money on lobbyists than what they pay in taxes. And that's a fact. They spend more on lobbyists than what they pay in taxes. Let me repeat that. You don't find that astounding? And why would they do that? So they don't have to pay taxes. And so, like GE 2 years ago, they made $14 billion. Not only did they not pay taxes, they got subsidies from the government. That's obscene.
What do you think about the election campaign this time around? Obviously critics are calling it a reality show. We're seeing Obama and Romney just bicker. Do you think there's ever really been a bigger disconnect between what we're seeing in the debates and in the campaign than what real Americans are actually in need of right now?
I think what you're seeing is them finally rising up to the level of professional wrestling. And I say rising up to it, because in pro wrestling, in front of the cameras, we all hate each other. Behind the scenes, it's a business. And that's the same way it is for them. It's a sham. In front of the cameras and the public, they hate each other and they're on different sides of the fences. Behind the scenes, they're going out to dinner together. They're ensuring that their two-party dictatorship maintains its power. There's no difference between these two. Don't kid yourself.
Now, this September marks the one-year anniversary of the Occupy Wall Street movement,
Yep.
which you support the ideas of.
Yep.
What role do you think, if any, will this movement have played in the United States in the long run? Do you think in a decade from now people will look back and say, this really was a movement that changed the national dialogue?
Not yet, because they've disappeared temporarily. They need to come back. Where are they? They need to continue. They need to keep the fight up. Now they've disappeared. A decade from now, no one's going to remember the Occupy Wall Street movement, not unless it's victorious or does something. It hasn't done that yet.
How can a movement like that be victorious? What do they need to do?
By changing the country. They need to continue to stay at the parks. They need to continue to get arrested. They need to continue to be vigilant. How do you think we stopped the Vietnam War? The protesters, it took them more than 1 year to stop the Vietnam War. And to me, the turning point of the Vietnam War, many people say it was the '68 Tet Offensive. That was huge, but I don't believe that was the real turning point for America. I believe the turning point of the Vietnam War was when the 4 students were killed at Kent State. Because all of a sudden, the public, the general public went back and said, wait a minute, we're even killing people in our own country now because of this war. We're killing students on campuses because of this war. I believe that was the true turning point, the Kent State massacre of the Vietnam War. And I hate to say it, but it's going to require something of that magnitude for the Wall Street movement to truly have an impact and get to the psyche of mainstream America. Right now, they're not in the psyche of mainstream America. It's the old thing, out of sight, out of mind. Well, they're now out of sight, and rest assured, they're out of mind now. They must come back.
I would ask you about the way the U.S. treats elections abroad while actually really drowning in electoral process flaws here at home. Why this double standard?
There's always a double standard. There was a double standard on the Wall Street protests. While we're busy pepper spraying them and running them off with dogs, we're heralding the protests over in the Middle East. Oh, ain't this lovely? Go, go, go. We're like cheerleaders over there, while at the same time here, we're squashing down our own protesters. The height of hypocrisy.
But what about elections?
Elections the same way. We want to bring democracy all over the world, and we don't even have it here anymore. Because the 2 gangs pick your president, don't they? You have no say-so. You know, Mitt Romney was picked 4 years ago. You know how I know that? He wasn't picked at the convention. They knew 4 years ago. You know how I know that? Because when Obama won, right after Obama won, you started seeing these mass advertisements on TV about Mormons. Do you recall those? Where they'd show a person who was a fireman or a teacher, and they'd show all these attributes of how wonderful they were. And remember, the person would look at the camera in the end and say, and I'm a Mormon. Well, they were preparing us, because I remember as a kid when John F. Kennedy ran, he was the first Roman Catholic. And there was great fear in this country that the Pope would be running the country if we elected this Roman Catholic, until Kennedy came out with a very strong speech talking about his belief in the separation of church and state. I might be a Catholic on Sunday when I go to church, but when I govern this country, that won't enter into it. Well, that showed me right there. Mitt Romney was their pick 4 years ago of the gang.
So you think, considering you say started preparing 4 years ago, he's going to be the next U.S. president?
No.
Why so much effort for somebody?
Well, because he's the Republicans' main man. He's the one on the pedestal right now. John McCain was 4 years ago. George W. Bush was the 8 years prior to that. You know what I find interesting about the Republican convention? They didn't mention one word about Bush and Cheney. How do you ignore a president and vice president who a mere 3.5 years ago served for 8 years? It's like, oh boy. You know why? They don't want to identify with the true culprits. who killed our economy. They're selling the people now saying we're going to fix the economy. Well, this is the same party that ruined it. Because let me explain something. The economy doesn't happen overnight. It's decisions made about 4 years ago that will show up today. It takes about 4 years for those decisions because it's so massive. It takes about 4 years. Decisions made 4 years ago, you will see the results of them now. And so the economy went bad in '08. That means it was the decisions in '03, '04, and '05 that caused the economy in '08 to tank. And that falls directly on the lap of George Bush, Dick Cheney, and the Republicans. After all, from 00 to 06, Bush not only was in the White House, he had a Republican House and a Republican Senate. So he had anything he wanted to do rubber stamped. The Republicans caused this economy to fail. Barack Obama inherited it.
You're obviously an advocate for eradicating the institution of the Electoral College in the United States, right? Because every vote has to count. This is a system that's not applied anywhere else in the world.
It's not applied to any other election in the United States.
When you run for governor, the most vote. How can this be done?
Easy.
If we're seeing rotating chairs between Democrats, Republicans, they're obviously not interested in changing that system.
The people have to demand it. The people have to demand it.
Well, there are a lot of things that people demand that they don't.
Well, they have to be persistent and truly demand it. They have to threaten to vote them out of office. You got to threaten. If you don't change the Electoral College, you won't be sitting there next year. That's the only way they respond. It's the threat that they could lose their job.
You think the American people could really get worked up enough about the Electoral College when they have all these other things going on they need to deal with?
Difficult, but you know, the Electoral College was good when they put it in. You know why? You had to travel by horseback to Washington. That's why it was there. That was the only way they could determine. All the states had to send delegates by horseback. And it's ridiculous. It's the only election like that in this country. I've been a mayor. He who gets the most votes wins. Governor, Congress, Senate, whoever gets, why in this, and then they tell you, here's their excuse. Well, without the Electoral College, they'll forget about these tiny states like Montana. I got news for you. With the Electoral College, they've forgotten about Montana. If I'm running for president, you got to win with the Electoral College. Where am I going to spend my time, Montana or California? California. There's 30, 40 electoral votes there. Montana has 1.
All right. Well, apart from a mess at home, politically, economically, the U.S. is also struggling right now with handling issues abroad. As we speak right this second, of course, as you know, there are anti-American protests going on in a dozen countries in the Middle East. Do you think the United States is really on track to becoming pretty much isolated in the rest of the world, except for maybe by its Western allies?
No, it's religion. It's religion. That's what causes all the wars. Look at every war.
So you don't think
every war is caused by organized religion. And what started this? Some crazy film that went out on the internet here, knocking the Muslim religion. So that's what caused it.
You don't think there's any connection between what's going on now with these anti-American uprisings and the fact that the U.S. did play somewhat of a role in supporting the Arab Spring?
Maybe, but I think it's far more religion. All wars are caused by religion. Why do you think religion's the root of all evil, in my opinion? That's one of the reasons, well, I'm an atheist because I don't believe that there's a supreme being, but that's one of the reasons why I don't like religion at all. And guess who else didn't like organized religion? Jesus. He was opposed to organized religion. And it's all about religion. I mean, I worship God this way, you worship God that way. Oh, you better do it my way or I'm going to kill you. This is Muslim versus Christianity, what you got here. And I don't despise Muslims because you know who my idol is? Muhammad Ali. And you know what I saw when I visited Muhammad in his home? On his shelf, I took note of this, was the Quran side by side with the Bible in Muhammad Ali's house. Neither one prioritized over the other. And he didn't point it out to me. I just happened to notice that. when I was there. I'm observant at times.
So, Jesse, the Syrian crisis, the conflict has been gripping really the world for over a year and a half now. What kind of role, if any, should the United States be playing in this whole conflict? And if you were president, what would you do?
None. It's their business.
What about the whole idea of the United States trying to help out the Syrian people who have the right to stand up against their government?
That's up to the Syrian people.
So as U.S. president, you would...
I'd stay out of all of it. It's not my business. And if they don't like us, they'd get no foreign aid. I'd ignore them if they don't like me. I don't hang out with people that don't like me in my real life. If I know someone dislikes me, I don't go out of my way to befriend them. No, if I don't think the United States, who made us the world's policeman? In fact, I'd take it a step farther. If I were president, every foreign military base the United States has would be closed, and I'd bring our men and women home. We have the technology today with our military. We can destroy anyone in the world at any moment. What do we need bases and occupy? I mean, we got multiple bases in Japan, Korea, and Germany. Haven't those wars been over for 60 years? Why are we there? The point I'm making, the United States today is an empire. It's time to end the empire. Empires always fall. We're going identically down the road that Rome went.
I saw you mention in an interview recently that you're 60 years old, and for half of your life the United States has been involved in wars.
No, it's all my life now. I redid that statement because if you count the Cold War and the war on drugs.
60 years of fighting, can that mentality ever be changed?
I hope. That's a dream we all have to have. It's a dream that John Lennon had. It's a dream of give peace a chance. Why don't we try it? 60 years of my life, and we have yet to listen to John Lennon give peace a chance.
Do you think the same rules apply to no matter what kind of geopolitical interests the United States has with a country in crisis? Does it apply to every country? Do not get involved in their business? Or
no. I would get involved with another country's affairs only if that country specifically asked, please come and help us. But clearly in the Arab world, they're not asking. Our military doesn't defend the people of the United States and our freedom. Our military defends multinational corporations. That's why we're in the Middle East, because there's a lot of things corporations need there. And it goes back a century. Do you know who General Smedley Butler was? He's the most decorated Marine in U.S. history. He won 2 Congressional Medals of Honor. He died in the early 40s. He wrote a book called War is a Racket. And in the book he said, I didn't defend, this is back at the turn of the last century. He said, I didn't defend the American people or this country. He said, I worked for the United Fruit Corporation. Whenever they'd go into Central or South America and didn't get cooperation, they'd send in the U.S. Marines to get it.
Can I ask, with the support of, you say that presidential candidates should be independent and should not be affiliated with any party. How does that...
I think all elected officials should not be part of a party.
But how does that guarantee that there will be no corporate involvement?
It doesn't. We have to change the laws back to say corporations cannot contribute to political parties. Corporations are not individuals. The law used to stay here. Corporations could not contribute to a political campaign until this latest Supreme Court decision. That's what changed it all. When I ran, corporations couldn't contribute.
I wanted to ask you about the whole Julian Assange ordeal. Do you think it's been way overblown by the United States and the West and the whole story of his attempts of political asylum to Ecuador? What's your take on this whole case?
My take is that I want to know what they know. And I have every right to know what my government does. You want to know why? Whose money do they use? Mine. Taxes. And as a taxpayer, I have every right to know what they're spending it on. Every right. Now, I understand there's certain clandestine things that happen, but a year after it's over, I have a right to know what we were doing. They're running on my tax dollars. And again, let me repeat, I have every right to know what they're spending my money on.
Do you think you'll find out?
Oh, absolutely not. Unless I become president.
All right, Jesse Ventura, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It's always a pleasure.